right, so Pete brought to our attention yesterday that
failed to follow through on the idea.
Yeah, Pete comes up to my desk yesterday and says, hey, got a good idea for a lobby segment. Nintendo is releasing these 10-minute episodes behind the scenes making documentaries of Breath of the Wild. So I say, cool, let's all watch that so we can talk about it. Jake and Callie watched it.
I watched the whole thing.
I gave these people homework and they didn't do it.
I watched all 30 minutes.
If this was third grade, I would put you in detention.
Dude, I went to art school for a reason. Okay.
No, that's not. That was
you
high
don't
school.
have detention in third grade.
In third grade, they just
you get a pink slip.
They just they put you in that closet where you can't eat for a day.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Did you guys not do that in third grade? No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But yeah, so we want to talk about that. Some cool stories came out of it. I wrote down notes, but it's worth watching. I don't think there's anything revelatory, but there are some cool things behind like the art inspiration. That's one thing I want to talk about. But just like where the influence came from, because like as great as that game is and fantastic, we've talked about it. Pete, you gave it a 10 out of 10. You can go read the review on GameSpot.
I did?
Yeah. And we did an episode of Reboot, which I'm going to plug right now. Jake and I have been working on this new show. If you missed like Daniel Dwyer's The Point, that's clear inspiration for us. More of opinion editorial show series. And then bi-weekly show. Our most recent episode was on Breath of the Wild and why I personally think it's like the best open world game ever made, and it sets a new benchmark for other games. And I think it does things that The Witcher didn't. And I think it does things that Metal Gear Solid 5 didn't. Not that they are all the same game in any way, but I think open world games moving forward can learn a lot from Breath of the Wild. We did an episode about that, and it was pretty cool for the documentary because they talked about how, like you start with Skyward Sword, right? It's just open air concept.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Although it was kind of masking the fact that the world below was very, very, even for a Zelda game, segmented.
Right. And so I did watch a little bit of the first episode, and they talked about the open air concept like almost at the start. And it's been something they've been trying to capture since Wind Waker.
Yeah, because with the open, like the seafaring travel.
Yeah, but it seems like up until now it's been hardware limitations and the team size. Now, not that the Switch is like a crazy powerful console, but it seems like just enough for them to capture their vision. And then they had the biggest team behind a Nintendo game ever. So I think those things kind of came together for them here.
Yeah, and they said, they wanted to recapture the feeling of exploration, which they've been saying since the beginning. But when we first heard, because when they announced this, correct me if I'm wrong, Link Between Worlds was not even out when they first announced the concept for Breath of the Wild, right? Because they said when they announced it that you will not have to do dungeons in a certain order. It'll be open world. So we're like, how the fuck is that going to work? And sorry.
You don't even have to do the dungeons.
Right. And we were like, how's that going to work? And then Link Between Worlds came out, and we're like, oh, this is cool. Like, they take a Link to the Past formula and show us how it can work with this top-down view. But still, we've never seen like a truly open world Zelda game before. Comes out, not only is it just open world, but it's also this like physics engine that you can. I was reading through that NeoGAF forum last night, the craziest things you can do in Breath of the Wild that a lot of people don't know. I think I'm 45, 50 hours into the game at this point, and I was still reading things I had no idea what you could do.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the classic things like this. They said they wanted to maintain a lot of the Zelda tenets. That's the footage they chose to show, was the chickens and Kakariko chasing you after you like knife a couple of them. Knife one a couple times. But yeah, they said they took, when they first showed, they did the GDC talk a couple weeks ago, and they were saying that to show the concept, they took like this 8-bit original Legend of Zelda look to show how the physics engine could work. With the thing they showed was, obviously you get the raft in the first game and you can cross the river, but they showed how like a log floating down rather than this item you get could help you cross the river. And then you play Breath of the Wild and it's, you're chopping down trees and you can roll the trunks or you can use the trunks to cross these ravines. They said that physics engine was a huge focus. And they said, and I agree, that in execution it ties you to the world a little more, right? There are these overlapping systems, and then, like I was saying, people come in every day, I feel like, still, after how many weeks after it's released, and we're all at least like 40 hours in, we're finding these new things. It's very intentional on their part that you could find new ways to approach the situation.
Well, they tie into, I think, the most basic actions that you do in the game, which is simply just, tied to exploration in general. Like, you don't have to wait to get to, like, say, Metal Gear Solid 5. You don't have to wait to, like, confront enemies before you're doing the creative stuff, right? You can be creative at any time in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and in the documentary, they specifically call out that they wanted everything in the world to interact, and that's how they got that feel, like the consistent discovery you get. I mean, like you said, we come in every day and someone found something new, or like a moblin threw a bokoblin at me, or whatever it is. All of that is because they put a lot of their effort, technically and as far as overall direction goes, into making things interact together. That was one of the most interesting parts of the documentary for me.
When they talked about the open world, I think it was known before it came out, didn't it? I think we had a news story in GameSpot about how the geography of this Hyrule is based on Kyoto.
So I think we published something about that.
Or was it when because you talked to, who'd you talk to recently?
So the 3 directors that have been represented here.
Fujibayashi?
Yeah, Fujibayashi, but there's 2 other guys, and I apologize for not knowing their names. I actually wasn't really aware of them until the interview. But I mean, like, based on Kyoto is kind of loosely. I mean, the thing about Kyoto is that it's still sort of steeped in tradition compared to a place like Tokyo. And so you do see, like, even when you're in the city of Kyoto, it's not hard to get to an environment that feels like nature still has some hold on space. So I think that's kind of what they were mentioning. And one of the more interesting anecdotes, sort of talking to them about, like, okay, well, this made me think about even just going outside my front door differently. Like, I was looking at even just like twigs on the ground, and I don't know why. Like, what is it about this game? And they're like, well, one of the things we wanted to do was recreate that feeling of being like a child at school, right? Like, every day you walk the same route, and you get to understand, like, not just landmarks, but like what those landmarks contain. And so you have this really deep familiarity with your environment and what you can get out of it. So that's not really the Kyoto aspect of it, but it's sort of just telling, like, how deeply they thought about making even something that looks like empty space interesting by packing it with very subtle activities.
Well, one of the developers in the documentary is talking about how because he's from Kyoto and because Nintendo is based in Kyoto, he thought about it as like, okay, I'm so familiar with this city that I know how tired I would be if I walked across the entire city, and that's sort of where that Kyoto inspiration comes from, as far as like the depth of the world and how it feels to walk across, if you were going to walk across the entire map, which sounds freaking impossible. And so that was a big thing. And then the other thing I really liked, just going off of like the Kyoto being steeped in traditionalism, was they were talking about the art style for the Shika culture, like the ancient cultures, was based off of the Jomon period, which is a historical period in Japan that not a lot of people outside Japan know about.
Which is crazy because it's like 12,000 years long or something, the actual period that when you say Jomon, it's like actually 4 different periods within it.
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I can't remember now, but the point was we're taking inspiration from something real because it's such a mysterious time period in our history that not a lot of people know about. So it's not going to kind of evoke connotations of any culture that people really recognize readily. I mean, that's another Horizon comparison, is there's lots of things in Horizon that evoke cultures that we know and see today, versus this is something that a lot of people didn't really know about before, and I didn't know about before watching the documentary. And so that's where all the smooth surfaces and kind of like when you open a shrine and the doors kind of open in that I don't even know, it looks like Jenga almost. All of that comes from the Jomon period.
Yeah, it was interesting. They were saying also, like, when you were saying who do they work with to like work on the elevation of the map?
Monolith Soft.
And that's huge, between the glider, the paraglider, and the fact that you can climb almost anything. There are a few surfaces you can't climb, but very few. Like, that makes the game feel very different. Like, the actual, again, I say this all the time, but it's not open world for the sake of it. It's like they actually recaptured the joy of an open world game in that just exploring is fun. I don't feel overwhelmed. I know there's 2 more divine beasts I have to get, and I know there's a desert I haven't even gone to yet. I know there's like this whole mountainous area with, the Rito, the bird people up there, and I don't even care because I know I'm going to get there, but I'm enjoying this traveling. It makes the art of moving from one place to another fun again.
Where so many games design their open worlds to funnel you into something in particular. Like, there are those aspects of the map here where it's like, okay, I see a path or I see a canyon, but you just can go anywhere and find something interesting.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a Korok seed, there's that moment of like, okay, wait, what else is out there? If I just took a left here and found something random, I could take a left anywhere.
Yeah, I keep getting so distracted. Like, I'm working on guide stuff, and I have a mission in mind that it has been artificially created for me. But I still, like, I take an extra hour to go do something because I just can't stop myself. And like I think I said several episodes ago, it reminds me of that feeling of playing Ocarina for the first time and seeing Death Mountain in the distance and thinking like I can actually go there. I can walk all the way there, and it's that times 1,000.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say one thing I think that I think Peter touched on a little bit, but the landmarks are like so important in this game, and they're so cool because when I went to talk to some people at CD Projekt Red about The Witcher 3 a while ago, they were saying how when you make a big world, landmarks are very important. Like that's how you get around without like just looking at your map the entire time. And this, like, I rarely open my map because there's all these landmarks everywhere. Like you walk out and you're like, okay, so Death Mountain's over there. Like I can see the Rudo village. Like they've got that spire over there. Mm-hmm. There's some towers around here, and just that kind of helps add to that sort of immersion, that sort of level of exploration.
It also does a really good job of, it's not all of a sudden a desert from a grassland. You see this transition area where it's like, oh, it's kind of getting these crags and ravines and the vegetation is fading away. Maybe there's a desert this way. Or you see your thermometer slowly dropping. You're like, well, I'm heading north, but I'm also like increasing my elevation. If you're not on Death Mountain, it's just getting colder. It does a really good job of tying all these areas together. Like I know this river is going to eventually lead to the lake, so I might as well follow it rather than looking at my map. And you can also, like looking through your viewfinder is big. You could set waypoints through your Sheikah slate, the telescope, and that's huge. And I like that they didn't. One thing I think Horizon did well too, and which Mass Effect does not from the 2 hours I played, and we'll get into, it was kind of reminds me of Arkham Asylum in that I was always in detective mode. And then in Mass Effect, I'm always, I hate pulling out that scanner. Yeah. Zelda does a really good job of not forcing you into the map, even though you kind of feel like you're revealing the map, but it's not like Far Cry, right? You go to this radio tower, and then all of a sudden these side quests all pop up. It's
just showing you the land, right?
You still like a cartographer.
You still have to find the activities there, and then you are deciphering like what you see on the map.
And I really liked when they talk about the behind the scenes thing about their concept of Link in this. I really like the idea that for the first time, you're not this hero that was just chosen. Like you're not one of the ancestors of this hero. You are this hero who you yourself failed in this quest, the same exact quest 100 years ago, and now you're back like for a chance at redemption, essentially. But I also really like that they said you can make Link not really that heroic in this game. You can fight bokoblins in these underhanded ways by like blowing up these barrels when you're sneaking around, or steal their weapons first. You're not this noble charge into every battle with your sword and shield drawn. You can be this like little dick.
You can also just say, sorry, Hyrule and Zelda, I don't care about you. And spend over 100 hours in this game anyway. Like you can close the book on this game without finishing it and still feel 100% satisfied.
Yeah. Dan Anderson on Twitter was asking what our opinions on the divine beasts and dungeons are in Breath of the Wild, and we can get to that really quick. But I also don't really think of, rather every other Zelda game I kind of judge by its dungeons. I think Twilight Princess, for as much, Jake, you and I were replaying it recently, and I don't love that game as much as I used to. And I don't think I'm going to like a lot of Zelda games as much as I used to, of course, because Breath of the Wild came along, but they're still great for their own reasons and for that Zelda formula of, 8 dungeons, you collect all these kind of arbitrary items that allow you to go fight Ganon at the end, or, Aghanim, whoever it is. Did I pronounce that correct? Aghanim?
Yeah.
Yeah. But Twilight Princess itself, I was like, it actually has great dungeons for as slow as the overworld can be, but now you have these 4... major dungeons, these divine beasts, but they're not actually that long. The first one,
right?
Like I say the first, but you can do them in any order.
A lot of people did
Zora.
a specific one first.
Yeah, the Kakariko Hateno Village trail kind of leads you to Lineru, where the Zora are.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought they're well designed. You can actually, I don't want to spoil too much, but you can actually mess with the dungeon in cool ways.
Yeah, I mean, that is the crux of all of these dungeons. I like the fact that they weren't too long.
Yeah.
And they're not filled with like, you got to find a key to open a door, to find a map, to get another key. And it's just like none of that stuff, which I actually grew kind of tired of as Zeldas went on. So here it was more just about really looking at the dungeon and considering it for how it presented itself to you as is, and then manipulating it to accomplish these little tasks.
And I'm a lot less intimidated to start a dungeon. Like if it's like 11 p.m. and I'm like, I should probably go to bed.
Sure.
I'll do one last shrine. Partially because that gives you a fast travel point when you complete a shrine, so that encourages exploration too. But also they're so self-contained, and I always found that if I just took a breath and looked at it, it wouldn't take me too long to figure it out, but I would pretty much always be satisfied with solving whatever it was. And so I like that they're self-contained, and it kind of fits. I've played exclusively in handheld mode, and it also fits that style for me really well.
Yeah.
I love the dungeon design, or dungeon, quote unquote.
Yeah, Bob Jones, the Twitch chat, was saying he just ignored the first village, Kakariko, which is kind of your first real objective of the few you have. after that, they kind of just let you loose. I mean, they let you loose right from the beginning if you want to. Once you get off the plateau, which kind of serves as the tutorial, but a very well-made tutorial in that you can, I say tutorial loosely because they're not holding your hand like a lot of games do now, like a lot of Nintendo games for the past few years have, and specifically Zelda games have, especially like Skyward Sword. The one thing people dislike about that is Fee, your companion, kind of like solves puzzles for you in some ways. And this is the...
Well, plus the intro to that game was like 2 hours of
Yeah.
teaching you what a video game is.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, Ocarina felt fast because if you know where to get the Kokiri sword, you can go get that really quick through that small labyrinth, through that crawl space, and then you can go buy the Deku shield once you get 40 rupees, but that was quick. And then you go right to the Deku tree. Now, Link, you're in these boxer briefs. You're staring out over this world. Go. Just do whatever you want. I mean, obviously, there are a couple things to kind of guide you, but it's not... It respects your intelligence.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
not
fact,
prescribed in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's... Someone was asking... Forgive me, I missed their name, but in the Twitch chat, if you think, like, Far Cry games would be better without that, map littered with side quest notifications. I can't, because you can turn those off, I think. But again, I think open world games going forward can look at Zelda. Granted, it was a huge team that made it, but not everyone might not have the time. And also, Nintendo was pretty good with, I think a huge reason they wanted to hold off, because they said in the documentary they really wanted to get early 2016 release once like the time came up, but then they're like, we'll just hold off. I'm sure the Switch release date, once they knew that internally, they kind of dictated maybe you should release Zelda as a launch game.
That was, yeah.
It's a good move because people are buying Switches left and right. I think it hit 1.5 million sold yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is huge and good because I don't know what the Wii U is at this point. How many weeks after release? 2?
I think it's 33 million over its lifetime, which is...
And now we're 2 weeks after the Switch release and it's already at 1.5.
Yeah. I might be wrong with 33, but I think that's what I saw.
Impossible to get one, too. So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, who knows? But... but anyway, I encourage you there. Like I said, there's nothing revelatory in that behind the scenes doc that Nintendo published, but it's worth watching if you really like that game and just want to see more about it. Also, you should watch our reboot episode. It's called, what do we call it? Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the open world game we need.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's been, I've taken a couple days off because I've been playing Mass Effect Andromeda, which we can only talk about the early hours right now. We'll get into that in a second if you're here for that. But yeah, go watch that behind-the-scenes documentary. Nintendo published it. We have a lot of Zelda content up on GameSpot, so you can go watch that. Jake's done a lot of stuff. Pete's done a lot of stuff. Pete gave the game a 10 out of 10. One of how many? Like, I think
12 or 13 in our 21-year plus history.
Yeah, the Metacritic, not to bring this up, but it was at, 98?
Right.
And now it's at 97 because of the whole Jim Sterling debacle. People are pissed off that
Just leave him
he didn't
alone.
like it. Yeah.
Everyone can have their own opinion.
It's still, I think it's an amazing game. Go play it yourself. But yeah, that behind-the-scenes documentary shed some light on it. And like I said, we have a lot of stuff up.
Yeah, and actually to that point, sort of some of the things the documentary is talking about, working on a feature, still kind of just trying to get it out there, about their process of identifying nature in this game and creating it and what they were thinking. So if you like the documentary stuff, keep an eye out for that as well.
Is that from the GDC chat with
the
directors?
The GDC chat, I'll be pulling a little bit from the documentaries they just released, and then sort of my own interpretations of what they've done.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, that stuff is all up on GameSpot and will be soon, and we're still working on a lot of stuff, so go check that out.